Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We are treating this session as a critical security briefing for enterprise technical teams. Honestly, if you're building or securing multi-agent AI architectures right now, you really need to pay close attention to this. Today, we're dissecting a major, emerging vulnerability in agentic AI systems, and we're basing this on a newly released open-source benchmark called XPIA. We're going way beyond your simple single-turn prompt injections here to look at something much more insidious. What exactly happens when malicious instructions cascade through a whole chain of autonomous agents?
All right, here's our roadmap for this briefing. We're going to cover the multi-hop XPIA threat, how agent boundaries are exploited, session smuggling and intent laundering, why single defenses are failing us, and finally, how to actually implement layered security. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The multi-hop XPI threat, or what happens when prompt injection goes deep.
Okay, let's dive into this. Take a look at this quote straight from the XPIA repository. It perfectly captures the core premise of our briefing today. Securing just the first agent in your pipeline? Yeah, that's no longer going to cut it. When we talk about XPI, cross-prompt injection attacks, we usually picture an attacker feeding a bad prompt directly to a single LLM, right? But modern enterprise architectures aren't just single LLMs anymore. They are these massive, complex pipelines where agents delegate tasks to other agents. The XPI benchmark was built specifically to test what happens across those delegation chains.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the nightmare actually unfolds in a real-world multi-agent setup. Walk through this three-hop scenario with me. Step 1. An attacker injects a single malicious document into your pipeline. Maybe it's just an innocent-looking PDF your intake agent is designed to summarize. Step 2. That intake agent processes the document and delegates a subtask to an intermediate agent, passing along the summarized and unknowingly compromised context. Finally, Step 3. By the third hop, a totally different agent with different permissions executes the hidden payload, and suddenly your internal credentials are being exfiltrated to an external Slack channel. And you know the terrifying part? No single agent in this chain technically did anything wrong. They all just performed their specific localized tasks.
Moving on to Section 2. Exploiting agent boundaries, the dangerous drop-off.
60. That is a massive number, and it's the headline finding from the XPIA benchmark. Detection accuracy drops by 60 points as injections propagate from depth 2 to depth 5 in an agent chain. Let that sink in for a second. As the payload moves deeper into your system, jumping from one agent to the next, your ability to actually detect it plummets by 60 points.
So why do we see that insane 60-point drop-off? Well, it's because traditional single-agent XPI tools, things like MCScan or PromptFoo, they fundamentally fail at delegation boundaries. They aren't measuring what happens when an injection crosses from one agent's context over to another's, and this leads to some incredibly concerning statistics. 84% of organizations literally cannot pass a compliance audit on agent behavior. Why? Because only 24% have any visibility into agent-to-agent communication. If you can't see what your intermediate agents are saying to your execution agents, you have a massive blind spot, and attackers are actively exploiting it.
All right, Section 3. Session smuggling and intent laundering. This is our core attack taxonomy.
To really understand how they bypass security, we need to look at the mechanics under the hood. Take XPIA 001, session smuggling. This is essentially an instruction piggybacking mechanism that kicks in right around depth 2. It exploits privilege differentials. Basically, the attacker hides a malicious command inside legitimate data. Because the intermediate agent is authorized to pass that specific data along, the smuggled instruction completely evades scope tokens. The system just sees technically authorized text moving between agents, entirely missing the hidden payload riding along with it.
But if you think smuggling is tricky, wait until you see XPIO 006, intent laundering. This is where things get genuinely fascinating but highly insidious. Intent laundering relies on adversarial refinement, and it usually pops up around depth 3. What happens here is that your own intermediate agents inadvertently help the attacker. As the intermediate agent summarizes or processes the injected text, it naturally strips away the obvious malicious detection markers and rephrases the payload into clean, natural-sounding output. The shocking fact here, the injection quality actually improves as it propagates. Your own agents are laundering the attacker's intent, making it look pristine by the time it reaches the final execution agent.
Which brings us to Section 4, the single defense failure, and exactly why our current primitives just collapse.
Let's conceptually pit your strongest single defense against this advanced attack. On one side, we have intent verification,
which checks if the system's output actually aligns with its original intended purpose. On the other side, we have that intent laundering attack we just talked about. Now, in a single-agent system, intent verification is usually quite robust, but in a multi-hop environment, because the intermediate agent cleaned the malicious instruction and made it look like a normal, internally generated request, the laundered instruction effortlessly bypasses semantic similarity checks.
And looking at the hard data, the true positive rate, or TPR, of the intent verification defense paints a pretty grim picture. Against basic session smuggling, it performs admirably, catching 82% of the attempts. That's a 0.82 TPR. But look what happens when it faces intent laundering. The true positive rate plummets all the way down to just 38%. The strongest single defense you have collapses entirely because it can no longer recognize the threat once your own agents have rewritten it.
And it's not just intent verification that fails in isolation. Other standard defenses completely break down at these agent boundaries as well. For example, taint tracking, which tags malicious input so you can follow it, loses its provenance at naive memory store boundaries. When an agent writes to a memory store and another reads from it, the taint metadata often isn't persisted alongside the values. That leads to a successful memory poisoning attack, which is classified as XPIA 002. Similarly, as we mentioned earlier, scope tokens fail completely to catch intent drift when the smuggled payload is embedded within text the agent is technically authorized to handle. Single defenses simply cannot survive the jump between systems and memory stores.
All right, Section 5. Implementing layered security, defense in depth for multi-agent systems.
Evaluating all this data helps us build an actual mitigation strategy. The benchmark evaluated 4 defenses: intent verification, taint tracking, scope tokens, and data loss prevention, or DLP. This table right here compares relying solely on intent verification versus layering all 4 of those defenses combined. Look at the overall attack success rate, the ASR. Relying on one defense leaves you with an ASR of 0.52, meaning attacks are succeeding more than half the time. But by layering all combined defenses, you drop the overall attack success rate to 0.36. You also see the true positive rate for catching intent laundering rise from that dismal 0.38 back up to 0.52. However, we really have to be intellectually honest about the limitations here. While layering defenses is absolutely a best practice, and it significantly reduces the overall attack surface, look at that final metric for intent laundering again. Bringing the detection rate up to 0.52. I mean, it is better, yes, but guys, it is still essentially a coin flip. Defending against a payload that has been semantically cleaned and repackaged by your own internal trusted agents remains an incredibly challenging problem in AI security right now. The data flat out proves there is no silver bullet yet.
Which brings us to the absolutely most critical takeaway from this entire briefing. Remember that statistic from earlier? Only 24% of organizations have visibility into what their agents are saying to each other. So I'm leaving you with this question, and I want you to ask yourself and your engineering teams this today. Do you have visibility into your agent-to-agent communication? Because if you don't, you are flying completely blind against multi-hop cross-prompt injections. It is time to reevaluate your enterprise pipelines and ensure your monitoring goes so much deeper than just that first agent. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer on the XPIA threat. Keep learning and stay secure out there.